Um, I think the first one I'm going to do is called the Mrs. Simpson. And I like this fly. It's actually a New Zealand fly, but I like it because to me, it's like a really good representation of like a small bluegill, green sunfish. You know, if you fish the out at Fontenelle or some of the any of the local ponds, there's a lot of real small panfish, and that's what the bass eat. That's what the bigger fish eat. That's what the crappie eat. The big crappie eat the smaller bluegill and stuff like that. So these are actually flat, flies that have a slim profile. And so um, the Mrs. Simpson, I don't have a sample fly, uh, but it's today it's mostly used in South Africa and the UK, and quite a bit in the United States. Uh, there were killer patterns, they called them, in New Zealand. There's a lot of different examples. If I get time, I'll do the what's the other one? Um, Hamill's killer um, is one of them, and then there's a Walker's killer that's real popular in South Africa. But these killer patterns in New Zealand, probably the most popular is the Mrs. Simpson, and uh, it's a style of flies that has a tail of squirrel tail, a chenille body, overlapping feathers tied on the sides to give a flat vertical appearance. And, again, to me, it's a good sunfish representation. Uh, and they can be really good for smallmouth and largemouth. I did want to cover the materials. I can, um, if anybody was able to watch the FFI presentation from Gunnar Brahmer this last Tuesday, he covered a lot of different things you can do with a pheasant pelt. If you're a pheasant hunter, if you know one, if the local people here, um, you can try to harvest some feathers off of some birds. You just have to be careful to clean them and everything before you put them with your fly tying materials because you don't want to introduce any. You could really easily introduce mites and different things that can destroy your materials. So make sure you properly clean and sanitize them and everything. But I did want to let me bring it up bigger here and then I'll share it. Um, at Cabela's, I just looked and you can get can everybody see that? You can get a ringneck pheasant skin for $20, 21.99. They've gone up in price a little bit. Um, but that's going to have flies for so many different patterns. The Matuka flies that we'll be covering later on, that Mrs. Simpson will be doing right now. Gartside sparrow. Again, if you watch the Tuesday YouTube video, he used mostly pheasant feathers, and he did a fly that could represent large mayflies or small crayfish. He also does like a similar to a woolly bugger with the marabou stuff that you can get from a pheasant skin. Um, the marabou is back in here under, if you turn the pelt over, it's back in here around the back end here. It's a lot of real soft. It's kind of like chickaboo. Here's a small one that fell out. Um, Real nice marabou-like feathers. Um, but for the Mrs. Simpson, you could use pretty much any of these colorful feathers. These um, church window feathers, uh, on the shoulders here. Um, a lot of people mostly use these rump feathers, these green and blue mottled rump feathers, and that's what we'll do tonight. Uh, the body is a little bit of red wool wrapped around the hook shank, and then it has a little bit of a tail, a black squirrel tail. So I'm gonna grab some. Kind of like to use a 2X or 3X hook on this. Let's see what I got for sizes here. Use a maybe a size 6. So again, this is the Mrs. Simpson 2X or 3X long nympher streamer hook. I usually use black thread um, or a hook this size. It's and a streamer. It's pretty safe to go ahead and use a 140 denier. This is UTC, but a 6/0 or 140 denier um, thread should do the trick. And I'm gonna zoom out some here. See more of what I'm doing. I'm gonna go ahead about a hook eye back and start my thread. And lay down a little bit of a thread base all the way back to the bend. Whoops. It's always a good excuse to say reaching around the camera makes it kind of hard to wrap the thread. But so I'm going to tie in a tail. Um, you can use black bucktail. Um, I have some black squirrel that's, I don't know if this was actually a black squirrel, if this was dyed. It looks like it's actually natural. I'm going to grab pretty good clump here and cut it away. And then I'll just kind of hand stack this. I'll just take these tips and pull it away and then line those up. And then any of that shorter stuff, I'm just going to throw that away. So now I've got them pretty well aligned. I don't need to really stack them. Actually, I will, just to make it look prettier. And I have to say that right there looks really nice. I'm going to use that. So um, I don't quite want this to be like too long. I want it to be like maybe about a hook shank in length, not a full hook in length. I'm going to move that back to the end of the fly there. Go ahead and tie that down back toward the front. And then I'll cut loose the butts and I'll go ahead and tie in a piece of red yarn. Of course, red wool is what the originals were probably tied with. Um, this is a synthetic. And I think just looking at the density of this, oh, that might be okay. Um, I'm going to start actually back here on about about the midpoint of the hook. And I'll tie this wool down. Back to the bend of the hook. And now I'm going to come back over to my pheasant skin. And I'm going to select size 6 hook. I'll probably move back toward the back of the bird a little bit here and get some of these longer ones. Well, there's a green one, so I'll kind of focus on these ones that are more green. Grab another one.
Are you back on the rump section, Mike? Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is where the head of the bird would be. And then you've got these church window things on the sides here. The wings would be over here. And this is the rump of the bird. You can also buy a pheasant rump from certain fly shops. But I'm going to take this and all this fluff right here. Um, if I thought I wanted to use it for other flies, I would. Also, um, there's some flies where this after shaft feather right here comes in useful. So I am going to set that aside. But all this gray fluff here, I'm just going to go ahead and toss that. I'm going to strip it off back at the vise. These are actually really easy to tie. Um, I'm just going to strip back most of this and then cut those real thick stems. Ringneck pheasant has very thick stems at the base. And then as you can see right here, they're very thick where I cut it even, but they taper off significantly right back toward this colorful stuff. So what I want to do is kind of line these up tip to tip, flat like that, where the tips are aligned, and then just kind of judge where I would get about halfway down that tail.
Mike, are you using the concave side in or concave side out?
Yeah, so you want the pretty sides out.
Okay.
So the the concave side is dull and ugly. And so you just want to line those tips up like that. And then I want those tips to be back there. So I have my feathers selected. I'm going to take this yarn. And I'm going to wrap forward to my waiting thread. You can tell that's synthetic. Boy, that won't cut. All right. So I have my yarn cut out of the way and my thread's waiting right there. I'm going to take those feathers and I'll do the one on the far side first. If I have it halfway down that tail, I can go ahead and strip some of this fuzz off. And just to make sure these lay flat, it's always good to leave a little bit of that of those barbs on the feather. So you're not just tying the stem down, you're actually tying the feather down as well. So I'll pull that back to where it's halfway down the tail. Then I'll take the closer one, the one facing me, line those up, tie it in tight, and then I'll move forward and cut off those butts. I'll tie the wool back in there. Wrap that forward. Cut that off. Then I'll take
freeze mine?
2 more feathers. That are about the same size and markings. Save the after shaft. I'll do the one on the opposite side first. Halfway down that other part, we're layering this. I want that feather to be, I'll actually strip some more of this off so I don't have too much at the head. Want that to be about halfway down that last feather. And then on the side closest to me, I'll line those up even. Probably wouldn't hurt to stroke all that back, go to the eye, and then start forming a nice head. And then my 2 hackle stems here are I'll clip that one. Dog legged in there. Form a nice cone-shaped head there. And whip finish. Then, of course, glue the head. You could use UV to make that real nice and shiny. This is just Sally Hansen's. And that's the Mrs. Simpson. So when that gets wet, it's got that red shining through the middle. And it's got that flat profile. As that, wet, that's all going to be flat like that. Real good representation of a small sunfish. This fly is called, I have some old sheets here that I'm kind of going through. Forgive the page flapping. Again, I don't think I'll have time to go back to it. If I do, I will. But the Mrs. Simpson those were called killer flies. And there's a Hamill's killer that's yellow wool instead of red. It has black squirrel for a tail, but golden pheasant tippets kind of come over the top of it. It's really cool looking. But then the wings, the layered wings are mallard flank instead of pheasant. You could definitely use mallard flank instead of that. It's kind of easier to come by. The Matuka fly, I'm not going to go through the whole history of it, but basically the short of it is that it was originated in New Zealand in the mid 20th century. It's of course spread to the Europe and the United States. It was originally the Matuka, the name, I think comes from it's a it's a fly. Actually, it's from a bird that produced the feathers. It's a brown bittern, and in their language, it was called the Matuku in the Maori language or whatever. That brown bittern, and the fly became so popular that the bird almost was extinct, so they had to ban the use of the feathers. So basically, today they're used with pheasant feathers. There's a, I'll show you a picture by the vise there. Um, there's one where they're using one of those kind of church windowy kind of ringneck pheasant feathers. Um, but I do a kind of a spin on it because we have so many, as you'll find out next week. We have so many lakes around here where they're stocking yellow perch. It's more of a big thing up north. Um, I'm sure Bill's familiar with them. But there's a lot of lakes around here, Walnut Creek included, where they're putting tens of thousands of yellow perch in them. And so yellow perch is going to become a forage fish, a forage, for a lot of the um, predators around here. So uh, the next fly I want to do is called a Perch Matuka. And again, we're going kind of flat here. Um, what I'm going to use is this is a like kind of soft hackle barred. It's an olive barred soft hackle basically, and I'm going to use some of those feathers as my sides, and then the body is olive and orange uh, chenille, and then I'm going to use a gold braided tinsel uh, to kind of tie all that stuff together. So back to the vise. So the Perch Matuka, I'm going to just basically start off here toward the front, and my scissors are here. I'm going to go ahead and start in just to give the body a little bit of bulk. I have some olive chenille here, but if I can find the end of it, it'll be great. There it is. I'll just take like a couple card lengths, make sure I have enough. And I'm just going to go ahead and start tying this down along the hook shank. Back toward the back. And then flip it out of the way. And now I'll zoom out quite a bit here. So I'm going to pick out a couple of feathers that kind of match. These two look pretty good. So I'll pluck those free. And I want these kind of line up the tips a little bit here. I want the tail of this fly to basically be, like I said, about a hook shank in length back from the end. So just make sure what I have here. Okay, this is basically just a grizzly soft hackle
Okay.
in olive. And so to me,
Okay.
that's a real good representation of a perch, the stripes on a perch and,
Hmm.
a yellow perch. So I want the tail to be about the length of the body or the shank, I mean. So I want my tail to be about right there. So that's how much feather I'm going to need. But the cool thing about a Matuka is you then take that point and just go ahead and strip the bottoms of those feathers off. So we're going to tie it in right there.
Ooh.
Concave sides facing each other so that my result is the colorful side on both sides, right? So then there's the length of the shank. And then I come forward and strip off all the bottom stuff. Now I have my feathers prepared, and that's how they're going to end up laying on the hook, like that. I'll set those aside. I want to tie in my gold rib, and I'm using a braided pencil that's kind of coarse here. I'm going to pull off about maybe 9 or 5 inches of that. Tie that in. I'm going to come forward to about the maybe 1/3 back from the eye of the hook. Now I'm going to release my clip here and take that olive chenille and wrap the body forward. I'm just going to tie that in with a couple of wraps, and then I'm going to hold it back here again. There's that clip. There it is. And this is just a touch that I do. Again, this is kind of my Perch Matuka. I'm going to take some orange chenille and I'm just going to strip some of that loose like that so I have the string core. And then tie that down nice and tight over the string core and come forward with it. Then I'm going to take the orange wrap it forward to the thread. I don't want to crowd the eye too much, so I'm going to stay back some. Take a few wraps there, a couple on the hook shank, and then I'll cut that orange out of there. Then the olive will come back over the top. And it doesn't matter a whole lot, but it makes me happy. Few wraps there. Got that out of the way. So now I take my 2 feathers that I had prepared and setting my scissors down, I split them apart at all. line them up together. The tips are even. And that point's even right there. So I'll lay those down. What I'm going to do is actually cut these butts because they're curled right there. I'm going to cut those just to kind of get them out of my way. They're stiff and they're opposing each other. And they're causing a little bit of trouble. So let me try to get these lined up like that. All right, I'm going to use an owl trick. And when the feather is bent in the wrong direction and giving you guff, take your fingernail and just give it some crimps like that. And now it's straight. I'll do that to the other one. And then I'm not fighting it anymore. Use your thumbnail just to kind of crimp that and make it straight. Now this should work a little smoother. Lay those two feathers together evenly. And I like to go ahead and take a couple wraps here just to tie that end down. I said a couple, but I did about 6. And that just keeps that steady. And now I'm going to take my rib and right here at the back, I'm just going to take a little split and wrap it through. Make another little split. Sometimes moisten your fingers a little bit. Take another wrap. Another wrap. Another. Boy, this is a cool looking streamer when you're done. And I'll go ahead and tie off that gold tinsel. And then I have the butt ends and the tinsel to cut off here. I think that'd look really nice with just a little bit of that feather that I did wrong. I'll tie that in with the concave side down. And just do a couple of wraps like a soft tackle right here at the head. Fold everything back. And whip finish. Catching some hackles there. And I don't really have much of a head, so I'm going to go ahead and Tie those back. Cut that hater off. And this would definitely do good with some head cement. And that makes a very, very nice baby perch. You can run into a little bit of trouble, you know, getting those feathers just right. But with the Matuka and the Mrs. Simpson, you could use any, this is it's a soft hackle with chicken boo pelt that I got. It was on sale from when Hook and Hackle stopped doing their fly tying materials. So I got a really good deal on this, but it's real mottled, kind of a rust colored.
Mm-hmm.
That would make fantastic. Actually, that might not make a bad Mrs. Simpson fly either, but you know, that would make good. Whoops, I'm not on centered on the camera very good here. With that mottled stuff with the reddish color, that'd be really good for these. There's
That
another
Brahma?
soft hackle.
Wow.
I was kind of thinking of what I might do as a gray one, gray wings, but then have the chenille body be maybe dubbing. If you look back at the one I just tied, have the body down in here be like a gray dubbing, but then have a black chenille over the top of it, and then have this gray soft hackle right here. Zoom in some.